Welcome on back, everybody, to the All Aussie Rules Footy Podcast. This is episode 32, and this is our AFL Round 14 preview for 2024. As always, in our preview episodes, we'll have a look at the latest news. Not that there's much this week. Round 14 preview, then we'll finish off with our tips for Round 14. As always, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. This podcast goes out live on YouTube and Spotify twice a week, as well as plenty of other content that goes live on the YouTube channel. So go check all of that out. We've just finished another 6 mid-season review episodes that have come out in the last week. That's 12 out so far. There's 6 more to come next week. So go check them all out. Tons of content on all your favourite teams. Also, we have plenty of social media content. There's Twitter, there's Instagram, there's Facebook, and there's TikTok. So go check all of them out as well. But without any further ado, let's just jump straight into the round 14 matches. Now that there's no Friday, no, there is still Friday. Now there's no Thursday night games. The teams actually get released before I record the episodes. So that's a positive. We can have a look at the who's in and out for each team as well. So we'll start off Brisbane, St Kilda, Friday night football, up at the Gabba. Big game for the Lions. Actually, big game for both teams. Loser, pretty much not 100%, but certainly very, very difficult to make finals. Brisbane going in with no change from last week. Last week they did play last week. They played the Bulldogs and got a good win. St Kilda, they have Zane Cordy in, Ari Schoenmaker, Zach Jones and Cooper Sharman all in. Out goes Dougal Howard and Jimmy Webster injured. Wangani Malira has been managed and Tim Membry has been omitted, so dropped. So we got a debutant, Ari Schoenmaker, making his debut. Good luck to him, number 27 for St Kilda. He's lining up on a back flank, or that's where he's been named at least. And the only milestone for the game is Marcus Windhager playing his 50th game, so good luck to him as well. Having a look at, I guess, some of the stats and figures and everything about this Brisbane St Kilda game. Brisbane, no surprise, will be going into this as short-priced favourites. St Kilda haven't shown a heap. They obviously are coming off back-to-back wins, but they were against West Coast and Gold Coast. So Brisbane will go in massive favourites on a Friday night. I don't think that will be any surprise. Recent matches between these two teams. Last year, they did play 2 games. The game at the Gabba was won by Brisbane, only by 12 points, so not a massive margin, but Brisbane did dominate that game. They just kicked poorly in front of goal, and that kind of kept St Kilda in it. They also played at Marvel in round 15, which Brisbane won that one comfortably by 28 points. In 2022, they played twice at Marvel Stadium. Brisbane won by 15 points, and at the Gabba, Brisbane won by 31 points. Last time that Saints beat the Lions was at on the Gold Coast in 2021. St Kilda won that by 32 points. Looking at that, 4-1 Brisbane in the last 5 between these two teams. Probably in the better form at the moment this season as well. The Gabba, the last 2 times they've played, Brisbane won them both, obviously. Average score across the last 5 years for these two teams playing against each other is about 142, so not a massively high-scoring matchup, this one, which comes as no surprise. St Kilda are the lowest scoring matches pretty much every week. Obviously, 15th best offense, but 4th best defense for for St Kilda, so that kind of leads to low scoring. My predicted score is Brisbane 85, St Kilda 71, just for those playing along. A look at some of the other things that I find interesting in this game. Brisbane's form's obviously improving. I don't think they've been that bad this year. They've just been struggling to put wins on the board. And it's kind of continued all the way through. They've dropped a few games they shouldn't have. But at the end of the day, they're a lot of their numbers are really good. Like you look at their inside 50 differential, their clearances, even their points against, their points for isn't bad. Like they're doing a lot of things right. They just, in the end, are losing matches. So key areas for this game, the inside 50 differential is going to play a pivotal role, I think, in this one. Brisbane dominate getting the ball inside 50. Their forward efficiency kind of lacks at times, but St Kilda's also pretty poor at forward efficiency, so I would imagine Brisbane probably do really well in that area here. St Kilda obviously not great at getting the ball inside 50, overall just in the negatives. Both teams are pretty good at clearances, very level, 4th ranked and 6th ranked overall, so won't see, we might see one team dominate, but it's hard to predict which one that will be. They're both very similar at that area. They're both pretty poor tackling teams in terms of compared to their opposition, so I wouldn't expect that there'll be a high tackle count here, but they might come out and change that, you never know. And neither of the two teams play really a great turnover and win games through winning the turnover game. I guess that's kind of shown by Brisbane being good at clearances. Teams that get their hands on the ball first don't typically win the turnover game. But St Kilda, probably the same, I guess. They kind of pretty decent at clearances as well, and they also kind of struggle at the turnover game. What that means for this game, I'm not 100% sure, but Brisbane at the Gabba, most things pointing in Brisbane's direction, to be honest. But they have let me down, and they've let everybody down who's tipped them many times this year, so I'm not like 100% confident in it, but I haven't seen enough from St Kilda to even think that they would win this one, so we'll be going Brisbane, I would imagine. Game number 2 of the weekend is Western Bulldogs versus Fremantle at Marvel Stadium. This has the potential to be game of the round. Could also be an absolute fizzer. Who would know? Bulldogs go into this slight favourites. Not massive favourites, but certainly favourites nonetheless. Looking at the teams, Bulldogs obviously coming off a bad loss last week against Brisbane at Marvel Stadium, which they wouldn't want to lose 2 games at Marvel in a row against the interstate teams, but stranger things have happened. The teams, Bulldogs have Ed Richards, Cody Waitman back from injury, and Anthony Scott coming in. Going out are Alex Keefe, who's injured, Lachlan McNeil and Riley Garcia are both omitted, and Riley West will be playing his 50th AFL game. For Fremantle, they've got a big in as well. They've got Matthew Johnson coming in for Corey Wagner, so they're coming off the bye. Obviously, before the bye, they had their best game of the season, maybe of the last 3 seasons, to be completely honest with you, when they beat Melbourne in Alice Springs. Things are looking good for Freo. Bulldogs, they're still up and down, one of the most inconsistent teams in football history, and they continue to kind of be that way, so we'll see what happens here. Looking at the two teams, they have already played each other this year over at Optus Stadium in round 7, so that's not even that long ago. This is round 14, so 7 weeks ago they played each other. Fremantle won that by 24 points. It wasn't a bad margin either way. Both teams played pretty well. Fremantle dominated the clearances that day. They were plus 17. So Bulldogs, who are a pretty solid clearance team, Fremantle are the best clearance team, and they absolutely dominated it that night in Perth. 2023, they played each other twice. The game at Marvel was won by the Bulldogs by 29 points. Bulldogs also actually won at Optus Stadium last year by a comfortable 60 odd points. 2022, they played each other in the first week of the finals, and Fremantle won that one by 13 points at Optus. and they also played each other in round 21 at Marvel, which Fremantle won by 17 points. So overall, Fremantle were 3-2 across the last 5 at Marvel Stadium. They're 1-1. Both teams have won one of them. Average score is typically about 167 between these two. That's the average across the last 5 matches. So that's probably about where it is. I think Fremantle showing potential to start scoring more. They obviously scored very well against Melbourne. I'd like to see them maybe string that together in a few more games to be fully committed that that's how they're going to play football, but it's a positive sign nonetheless. My predicted score here is Bulldogs 80 to Fremantle 85. Going it with a little bit of an upset there. Fremantle's numbers are really good. They've gone to Melbourne 3 times this year and won all 3, if my memory serves me correctly. So their travelling isn't bad this year. It's quite good, actually. Bulldogs, they're hit and miss. Their best wins this game. Their worst does not. Even their middle range does not win this game. But we'll see what happens. It's going to be an interesting game. It's a couple of weeks ago, I would have said this is offense versus defense. Bulldogs being heavy offense team, Fremantle being a heavy defense team. However, 2 weeks ago, Fremantle's last game, they did play a lot more attacking football. So maybe they're turning their game style into a little bit more attacking. But we'll wait and see what they do with that one. It's always tough coming off the bye. So that might be an interesting one for Fremantle. Coming off the bye, travelling to Melbourne, it's not going to be an easy task for them at all, but we'll see if they're up to it. If they win this, then they're a genuine top 4 team this year, I think. These two are the best 2 teams at disposal efficiency in the league. What that means is, I don't know, maybe, well, I do. It means they're the best 2 at making decisions, I guess, and executing those decisions, not kicking it to bad situations as often as other teams, and handballing, of course. Will that equate to an uncontested slow game of football? Potentially. Neither team are great tacklers. Bulldogs are probably better than Fremantle, but having said that, last game Fremantle ran the ball a lot more through the middle. So if that's the case, then all of a sudden we will be seeing probably disposal efficiency drop a little bit for them, but also scoring will go up immensely. Obviously, we kind of touched on it just a little bit ago. Fremantle are the number 1 clearance team in the league by a long shot. Like, it's not even close. They are by far the best clearance team in the league. It is kind of crazy how far ahead of everyone else they are. Bulldogs are very good at clearances, but Fremantle are just in another league, as shown last time these two played. Plus 17 last time. Not many teams beat Bulldogs by 17 clearances in a game, but the Dockers certainly did it. The Bulldogs will be heavily reliant on the turnover game, which won't surprise anyone because obviously Fremantle, who get the clearances, when they don't score, typically they're going to turn it over, give Bulldogs a chance to bounce it back. Bulldogs are typically very, very good at the turnover game, causing turnovers and then looking after the ball going down. There's been a couple weeks where they weren't good at it, which one of those was the Bombers game on a Friday night at Marvel. That was like round 5 or so. So quite a long time ago now, but that was like their really bad week at it. There's been a couple other weeks where they haven't been as good, but yeah, that's what they're going to be relying on in this game is their halfbackers, wingers getting back, causing turnovers, and then bouncing the ball to the other end and actually using it efficiently and well. That's what Bulldogs are going to be relying on in this one. Next up, that's the first game on Saturday. The Saturday 4:30 game, 4:35 kickoff at the MCG. We have Richmond Hawthorn. A month ago, I would have said, why are we even watching this game? It's not going to be entertaining at all. Richmond have kind of turned their form around a little bit, as have Hawthorn massively. It's the whole season's kind of changed in that regard. Yeah, massively changed. So looking at the teams before we go into anything else, for Richmond, two massive ins, Tom Lynch and Dustin Martin coming in for his 300th game. Going out is Samson Ryan and a big injury in Dion Prestia. But losing Prestia is bad, but getting Martin and Lynch back in is massive. Once again, Dusty Martin playing his 300th game. One of the modern greats. I don't think there's anybody that could argue that. His ability in big games supersedes pretty much anyone else of the last probably 20 years. What he was doing in their premiership years was insane. So congratulations to him. A well-deserved milestone and a well-deserved celebration of his career this weekend. For Hawthorn, they have Lloyd Meek and Nick Watson coming in. Outgoing Ned Reeves injured and Seamus Mitchell omitted. Giaff is playing his 50th game, so good luck to him as well. Bit overshadowed by 300 games by Dusty, but congratulations to him nonetheless. Looking at this game, Hawthorn obviously going in favourites. They're 4-1 across the last 5 weeks, and quite easily could have been 5-0 in those weeks if it wasn't for a 1-point loss to Port Adelaide when they conceded 2 goals in the last minute. The history of those two teams probably slightly irrelevant because Richmond obviously are worse this year than they have been previous years, and Hawthorn are probably the best they've been since pre-COVID, I would say. But nonetheless, we'll have a quick look at it. Last year they played once. Richmond got a 1-point victory at the MCG. 2022 they played each other twice. Richmond won the first one by 61 points. They won the other one, by 23 points. 2021 they played each other in round 23. It was a draw. And then their other meeting in round 2 was Richmond by 39 points. No, 29 points, bad math. So Richmond clearly have the wood on them over the last, since 2021, 4 wins and a draw. Average score between these two teams is about 178, but that is lowered massively by the 2021 score, which was a low-scoring game where just 127 points were scored, whereas they've had a game up to 211 points. So typically pretty high-scoring game, and maybe this one will be. Neither of them are great defending teams, although Hawthorn have kind of turned that around a little bit of late. Neither of them are massively high-scoring teams. Like Hawthorn's wins have been good, but they're not always the biggest scorer. But we'll see how it goes. I think Hawthorn win this one. My predicted score at the moment is 92-70 in Hawthorn's favour. Having a look at some of the key areas of this game. Richmond's last 3 weeks have been a massive improvement. Obviously, before that, things were pretty bad. They lost by 91 points or so to the Bulldogs, and then they lost by 119 to Brisbane. But they kind of turned it around the week after that. Dreamtime at the G, they played really good against the Bombers. Took them right down to the last quarter, only lost by a couple goals. Then they went down to Geelong and was beating Geelong at halftime, ended up losing by 5 goals, but not a bad result really for where Richmond are and where Geelong are. And then last week, obviously, they got their win, went over to Adelaide, surprised a lot of people, and got the win over there. So they've kind of turned their season back around. They're looking up. Tom Lynch comes back in, big in for them. Dusty Martin, everyone's going to be getting around Richmond. So if Richmond were to cause an upset, it wouldn't be the biggest surprise in the world. But all things being equal, Hawthorn probably win this one. Hawthorn, are they finals bound? If they win this, it's hard to put an argument to say that they're not capable, because their last 6-7 weeks has been fantastic, and they're certainly playing a good brand of footy that's getting them wins. So you can't argue with that. Looking at some of the stats, Hawthorn's inside 50 differential is probably their best part of their game. They're just positive in it, but over the last 6 or 7 weeks, it's certainly been improving, because it was quite low. Neither team's great out of the middle, which for Hawthorn's okay, because they've got a good turnover game. Their backline is really strong. They have some good tools that are good at intercepting and rebounding the ball. For Richmond, it's not quite so good, because they have a couple good intercept players. Nick Loston is good out of there. Noah Bolter going to the back line has certainly helped them, but it's a lot of work for them to do, to be honest, and they haven't been fantastic at it. So I think that area of the game favours Hawthorn big time. We'll jump into the next game in just a second. I'm about to lose my voice though, so just excuse me while I have a quick drink. Dear, sorry about that. Moving on to game number 4 of the weekend. This is the Saturday night game. Adelaide Crows hosting Sydney up at the Adelaide Oval. Sydney will go into this as massive favourites, no surprise. They are 11-1 on the season. Adelaide are 4-8 and a draw. Of course, losing last game against Richmond at home. So ins and outs for both teams. So Adelaide have Nick Murray, Braden Cook, and a big in Isaac Rankin. He only missed... Did he miss 2 games? 1 or 2 games? So he didn't miss much from his hamstring. Out go Brodie Smith, Chris Burgess, Ned McHenry, all omitted. Sydney don't have any changes this week. Unchanged. No real surprise there. They played Geelong last weekend, were very good. Will Hayward is playing his 150th game this weekend, so good luck to him. He's having a very good season, Will Hayward. He's kicked a couple little bags. He had at least 1 bag of 4 and 1 of 3. He's going along quite well, so good luck to him in his 150th AFL game. Looking at the history of these two teams, last year they played each other at Adelaide Oval and Sydney got the win by a point. In 2022, Sydney won by 30 points. That was in Sydney. 2021 in Sydney, they won again by 30 odd points. In 2020, that was in Adelaide. It was semi pre-COVID. It was in that one round that was played before AFL was put on hold. Sydney won that one by 3 points. And in 2019, in Sydney, Adelaide won by 26 points. Average score between these two teams is 171. They have had a high-scoring game of 209. Actually, 2 high-scoring games, 209 and a 206. So if you take out the 2020 game and maybe the 2019 game, the last 3 have been a little bit more high-scoring. Sydney 4-1 across the last 5 and have won the last 3, I believe, at Adelaide Oval. All very tight games though. 1 point, 3 points, and I think the other one was 3 points as well. My predicted score has Adelaide 79, Sydney 85. Sydney are clearly the better team. Adelaide's form isn't great, but they play well against Sydney. It's kind of like this matchup kind of reminds me of the Adelaide-Collingwood matchup in a way, where the last few times Adelaide have played Collingwood, they lose, but by less than a goal, and it continues to happen, and it happened again this year. Does the same thing happen for their matchup with Sydney? For their sake, I hope not, but we'll see. Interesting to note that Riley O'Brien's not coming back in this week. He obviously was dropped last week and was an emergency. He's an emergency again. I don't know why. Um, I just don't understand that, but they obviously have a reason. Um, I don't know what it is, but he certainly wasn't their worst player 2 weeks ago, and when they lost. And I think if he had played last week, they would have been a better chance to beat Richmond. But what would I know? Anyway, moving on, looking at some stats and some areas of this match. Sydney are the number one offense. They're the number two defense. Their whole season's just flying, really. They've got nothing going wrong for them at all across the board. They're going to get Callum Mills back at some point. Luke Parker will come back from suspension and probably come through the VFL, but push for selection for sure, I think. Sydney are just cruising. The difference in forward efficiency between these two teams is quite crucial, I think, because that's one of the areas. Inside 50s as well, so Sydney get the ball forward more often, but also convert more often, whereas Adelaide don't get it forward too often and also don't convert very often. So it's like a double positive for Sydney and a double negative for Adelaide, which suggests that that's going to be play fully into Sydney's hands. Both teams are very high in disposal efficiency, third and fourth ranked teams. Obviously, we saw earlier matchup number 1 and 2. This is the third and fourth teams going against each other. Another area of massive difference here is clearance game. Sydney, very good at it, plus 2.75, second ranked team. A mile behind the number 1 ranked team, but that's neither here nor there. And Adelaide are number 12 ranked team in clearances, so not very high at all. Sydney tackle well, they're the number 2 behind Collingwood, and Adelaide do not tackle well. Turnover game, both teams are pretty similar, but it doesn't really hurt Sydney due to the fact that they're winning the clearances, they're getting the ball forward, and they convert when they go forward. It does hurt Adelaide because if you're not winning the turnover game, if you're not winning the clearances and you're not winning the turnovers, you're not getting the ball enough, are you? So that's a major issue, I think, for Adelaide. Everything points towards a Sydney victory. No surprise that they're going into this heavy favourites. We move on to Sunday football. Obviously, these will be extended benches for these two games. First up, North Melbourne hosting Collingwood at Marvel Stadium. This is the shortest favourite of the day is Collingwood, no real surprise. However, North Melbourne are on the winners list. They finally got a win last weekend. Will they be able to back it up? They're going to have their work cut out for them, but you just never know. Last 5 meetings between these two teams. Before we do last 5, let's look at the teams. For North Melbourne, they have Hardiman, Phillips, Lazaro and Teakle all coming in. Obviously, extended bench. Out goes Will Dawson, injured. Bryn Teakle is a debutant, so good luck to him. First game. For Collingwood, Edward Allen, Chu Giaff and Reef McGuinness all coming in. Giaff is a debutant as well, got drafted last year. So he's coming in for a debut. I lied. Bryn Teakle is not debuting at all. I don't know where I made that up from. It's his first game for the Kangaroos, if he plays. But he might not, so we'll see what happens there. But he's on the extended bench. Braden Maynard is playing his 200th AFL game, and Giaff is making his debut if he plays. Extended bench, of course. Interesting to note, Nick Dacos has been named. Obviously, when subbed off injured last week, he is named to play and looks like he will play. Thought they might have given him the week off. It is North Melbourne, but they obviously don't want to take North Melbourne lightly here. So we'll see what happens there. Last 5 meetings between these two teams, they only played each other once last year. It was at Marvel Stadium. Collingwood won by 35 points. They played each other at the MCG in 2017. In 2022, round 17. Collingwood won that by 7 points. 2021, Collingwood won by 18. 2020, Collingwood won by 30. And if you go back to 2019, North Melbourne won that one by 44 points. So Collingwood have the edge overall, 4-1 across the last 5 games. At Marvel, 2-1 in that time period. Average score is about 170 points per game. That's across the last 3 games. I ignored the 2 before that because 2020 was a shortened quarters, and 2019, that's now 5 years ago. Expected scores, according to my calculations, are North Melbourne 69, Collingwood 93. So a pretty comfortable win expected for Collingwood. Doesn't mean it will happen though. A look at some of the stats between the two teams. Forward efficiency, Collingwood are number 4 ranked team. North Melbourne are ranked 16th. So Collingwood convert their forward moves into shots a lot better than most teams, and certainly a lot better than North Melbourne do, which is good for Collingwood because they don't get the ball inside 50 all that often compared to their opposition, but they do it a lot more often than North Melbourne, who are one of the worst teams in the history of the AFL at getting the ball inside 50. They're minus 17 per game compared to their opposition, which is just a ridiculously disproportionate amount of times to give the opposition inside 50s. It's no wonder up until last week they hadn't won a game. Both teams pretty bad at disposal efficiency. Collingwood are the 18th ranked team at disposal efficiency. Last week though was better from them, so maybe they're going to start moving their way up that list, but we'll see. Clearance differential, neither team great, both teams pretty even. 9th and 10th ranked, both just positive. Number 1 tackling team is Collingwood. Number 13 ranked tackling team is North Melbourne. So expect Collingwood to bring the heat. They usually do. I would hope to see that they do again against Kangaroos here. And the maybe the best area of Collingwood's game is the turnover game, forcing turnovers and taking it up and scoring. They win the turnover game pretty much every week. Last week they didn't do great at getting the turnovers, but they did convert a lot of turnovers into points and goals even. They were very efficient at scoring goals from turnovers, so that's probably the big area where they're going to cause a lot of issues for North Melbourne, is if North Melbourne do get the ball out of the middle, which who knows who's going to win the clearance game. If they don't hit their targets, Collingwood will certainly make them pay, whereas North Melbourne are going to probably struggle a little bit more at making Collingwood pay from the turnover game, based on what we've seen. Looking at the final game of the round, we have GWS hosting Port Adelaide at NG Stadium on Sunday evening at 4 p.m. Just ignore the fact that this graphic on the screen says SCG. It's definitely at NG Stadium. That's my fault. I obviously didn't change it from last week's game, which was obviously the Sydney Geelong game. But nonetheless, teams extended benches obviously, but GWS have Jack Buckley, Josh Kelly, massive in, and Max Gruiski coming in. Toby Bedford playing his 50th game, and Max Grueski is making his AFL debut, if he gets the go-ahead, obviously. Port Adelaide, they have Connor Rose, Ollie Lord, Dylan Williams, Will Lorenz, Dante Vizentini. I'll get there eventually. My mouth is not working. And Quinton Narkle coming in. Out goes Ryan Burton, injured. Charlie Dixon's been omitted, which is a big omission. And Jeremy Finlayson is also omitted. So dropping 2 big tall forwards. Trying some new things. Will Lawrence is debutant if he gets the go-ahead. Obviously extended bench at the moment, so we'll have to wait until tomorrow night to find out who's getting the go-ahead on that. But some big ins, especially both teams, Josh Kelly and Connor Rose coming in. Some big outs. Finlayson and Dixon both dropped. Burton also is a big out for Port Adelaide. Obviously, the axe was swinging over in Port Adelaide land after their poor performance 2 weeks ago against Carlton at home. Wasn't terrible performance. They lost to the team that's second on the ladder, but they obviously weren't happy with the performance of some of their players and have swung the axe accordingly. GWS will be going into this as favourites, reasonably comfortably favourites. I'm not 100% sold on that because it's been a little while since I've seen GWS really show me much, to be honest. Their recent form has not been great. They weren't great last week. They've barely been at their best over the last 7 or 8 weeks. They're 1-4 across the last 5 games. Recent history between these two teams, they did play each other in the semi-final last year, which GWS won by 23 points and knocked Port Adelaide out of the finals. They had played each other only a few weeks before that in round 22. Also at Adelaide Oval, Port Adelaide won that one by 51 points. Round 17, Port Adelaide, this is round 17, 2022, at Adelaide Oval once again. Port Adelaide won that one by a comfortable margin, 84 to 29. 2021, they played at Marvel Stadium, and Port Adelaide won that one by 27 points. And then in 2020, they played on the Gold Coast, and Port Adelaide won that by 17. So Port Adelaide are 4-1 across the last 5. However, they haven't played at NG Stadium or in New South Wales in the last 4 or 5 years. So it's going to be completely new for both teams, really, this matchup. Average score between these two teams of 166. My projection actually has Port Adelaide on top here. Port Adelaide 86, GWS 79. So 7-point victors according to the projection for Port Adelaide Football Club to cause another upset. Looking at these two teams, they're very similar in many ways. They have very similar scoring profiles, defending and offensively. The way they go about it is very similar. If you fully break down the game, they're two of the more similar teams in the AFL, in my opinion. GWS, though, they're dropping of late. Their numbers have pretty much fallen out of the sky. It's crazy. Their first 5-6 weeks, all their numbers, everything was really, really high. It's just dropped. What the reasoning for that is, I couldn't tell you. I just don't know what it is. Josh Kelly coming in is a massive in for them, but that's not the only reason they've dropped off. So we'll see what happens if they can find a way to turn it around. Maybe last week's performance was just on the back of a bye. They just weren't there, to be honest. Their first half was solid, not great, but solid. Their second half was average at best. Port Adelaide, number 1 forward efficiency team in the league. They do really well at getting the ball forward and also at converting those opportunities into scores. They're really good in clearance games, so they get the ball out of the middle, they get it going forward, they don't turn it over all that often, and they convert it into opportunities. They probably need to tidy up their accuracy a little bit. Their poor kicking at goal has cost them a couple games, I believe. But, they certainly create plenty of chances. The differences in these two teams is massive So while they scoring and match up similar in many ways, the major differences are that Port Adelaide get it out of the middle better and also get it forward more often, which isn't a surprise if you get it out of the middle often. Better than you're going to, not just the middle, but all contest better, get it going forward and then they convert it. Whereas GWS's clearance game is very average, especially of late. It started the season pretty well actually, but it's really dropped off to now be ranked 14. And inside 50s, they're also ranked 14. They really struggle in that area to stay in games. Their forward efficiency is okay, and their accuracy is one of the major reasons they stay in this. They consistently kick very straight. They tackle very well, both teams here. So I expect to see a pretty fast, hard contest here. Turnover game, both teams play similar in that facet, which plays into Port Adelaide's hands because they're the better team out of the midfield, really. And it's probably going to only help them this week with Connor Rose in there. Obviously, Josh Kelly for GWS also helps them in the midfield, but Rose in the midfield is a massive in for them. So yeah, that's a look at all 6 games this weekend. Only 6 matches. Obviously, there's 6 teams having buys. If you want to hear all about them, check out my YouTube channel. There's been 6 mid-season review videos go live on my channel this week. There was 2 last week, there was 4 the week before, and there'll be 6 more coming up next week. So go check all of them out. Plenty of content on all your favourite teams. I run through how they've gone this year, what do we expect for the rest of the year, and all of that sort of stuff. Before we leave each other this week, let's have a quick look at my tips. I went through them as we spoke about each game, but we'll just have a look at the end here as well. I was going to say Thursday night. It's definitely not Thursday night footy. It's Friday night footy. Brisbane, St Kilda. I've got Brisbane by 14 points, but it could well be more. But St Kilda kind of play low-scoring games, so we'll see what happens there. Bulldogs, Fremantle. Fremantle by 5 in an slight upset. Richmond, Hawthorn. Hawthorn by 22, but don't write off Richmond. Dusty's 300th. Adelaide, Sydney on Saturday night. I have Sydney by 6. I'd be surprised to see Adelaide win this one. Then on to the Sunday games. North Melbourne, Collingwood. Collingwood should be too good. I've got them by 24. And the final game of the round, GWS, Port Adelaide. I've got another upset here. Port Adelaide by 7. Not convinced on either of these teams just yet. Port Adelaide's numbers, though, are better than GWS, so that's why we're going with Port Adelaide. Thanks for tuning in. As always, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Check out me on all my socials, and we'll catch you on the next one.